then that was in the days of public relations and radio and television, which has really changed completely now. They're all gone. But they would only promote a book if it had been published within 90 days. And then after that, they shut the window and they go on to the next book. So I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll publish a book every 90 days. And that way I'll always be being interviewed. And so I did, and I was. And here I am today.
He can't stop. Yeah. So, one of the things that has continued to happen for you in all this time is your speaking career has remained crazy busy. You're still traveling all over the world. And besides creating products and writing books, but let's talk a little bit about what books have done for you and continue to do. Like if you take a look at, let's say when you first started writing and where they are now, what are books doing for you to this day?
Well, I spoke all day Saturday and Sunday in Saigon. I call it Saigon. It's called Ho Chi Minh City now. Yeah. And I was there during the war. And so I told them, I said, I was here 46 years ago. And the city has changed completely. And I said, I'm so impressed with the city, I've decided I'm going to come back every 46 years to check on you. But to answer your question. And what happens when you write a book is it transforms your thinking about yourself, and it transforms people's thinking about you. It's almost like climbing a mountain. It's something that only you can do. It's extremely difficult. Once you get to the top, you're a different person. Ever after, you're different. So writing a book transforms you, and then it transforms your credibility in the marketplace. It transforms the respect that people have for you. Jim Rohn was a good friend of ours many years ago, and Jim said to me, he said that he didn't write a book until after he'd been speaking for 20 years. He says it was the biggest mistake he ever made. And the book he wrote was not that good. But nonetheless, after writing the book, he said his whole career changed. Companies began to book him, pay him more money. He became more popular. His audiences grew, and they were already quite large. He said he just had no idea the difference between before and after writing a book. And so that's what I found.
Good. So I've got another question. It's more of a creative question because we're going to get into the meat and body of content.
Yes.
That's one of our next processes. But I want you to think for a little bit about if you think about after all the time that you've spoken, you've presented, you've been interviewed, people wanted to meet you, they bought your products, they relate to you through the stories that you tell in your books.
Yes.
And can you think of any specific instances or stories that stand out that consistently people bring up when they meet you, they talk about you, or they want you to talk about when you speak, present, and get interviewed? And what I'm driving at here is, it's easy to get trapped into thinking you have to teach, and do content in your books, but it's oftentimes the stories and the experiences that they experience with you that stick with them the longest and build the character and also your persona that they think about when they think about you. So I'm curious, I've never thought about asking you that before, but it's something that just dawned on me now as we are about to dive into this. When people are developing their content and their story, is there anything specific that you can think of? I'm totally pulling this, off the side.
Pulling it out of somewhere.
Yeah. Do you have an answer or an idea for that? Is something that people come up and, Brian, that story about blank really, really hit me.
Well, there is one right off the top of my head. I have 4 children, and my first child was a daughter, Christina. And I had studied child raising before we had our first child. And I realized the most important thing in a child's life is their level of self-esteem and self-confidence. And so my conclusion was that the ultimate aim of parenting is to raise children with high self-esteem and self-confidence. If you do that, they're going to be able to take on anything in life. So Christina was my first experiment. And I just ladled her with love. I told her I loved her all the time. I talked to her. I played with her. And one day, she said to me, Daddy, she said, how much do you love me? And I said, well, how much do you think? And she said, this much? I said, no. She said, this much? I said, no. She said, do you love me this much? And I said, absolutely. I love you 100%. She said, you love me infinity. In other words, without limit. And so for the rest of her childhood, we talk about how much do you love me? I love you this much. And it's just become her ongoing joke. If you spoke to her now, she's 35. She has a PhD. She has 3 beautiful children, well married, wonderful guy, everything else, but she still remembers that. Now, it's amazing how many parents have come back to me and said that that became part of their child raising, is that they told their children, I want you to know I love you this much. In other words, it's not 99%, it's not coming, it doesn't come and go like an accordion, it's 100%. And all of my children, I did with each of my next 3 children, have grown up with high levels of self-confidence and self-esteem. So that seems to be a story that parents remember from my books.
Very good. Now, I'll ask you my next big question before we kind of move on into the big beef of the rest of our program here. But I'm curious, again, if you look back historically at all of your books,
Yes.
Which one has consistently brought you the most business? When that could be traffic, leads, sales, product sales, speaking, which one and why?
Well, actually, I don't have a fixed answer for that. Mm-hmm. I wrote books because I wanted to be well known so that I could be booked as a speaker. And as I kept writing more and more books, I developed a system for writing books and a methodology. And what I found, and we talked about this a couple of minutes ago, is when you write a book, the universe changes. It's almost like all the molecules change. And you start to attract into your life opportunities for all kinds of things: speaking, writing, interviews, work. And people will even call you, contact you, hire you, who've never seen or heard of the book. The book sets up a force field of energy in the universe that changes the energy field around you. It's the most amazing darn thing. But so if you write more books, and every book I write is focused on you and helping you to be more effective, to be better in business, sales, personal life. I just wrote 14 business books on leadership, all published by AMACOM, American Management Association. And they're all with 21 great ideas on how to be a better leader, manage your time better, delegate, supervise, hire, fire, team build, and so on. And so each time I write a book, it's almost like a splash. Pow! My bookings go up. My bookings this year, and I've been speaking for 35 years, my bookings this year are probably as busy as they've ever been in my career. So writing the book transforms your life and transforms you, and then transforms your life and transforms you. It's the most amazing darn thing, even if they never read the book.
Okay. Very good.
Does anybody know what I'm talking about?
Which is super powerful. So I'm going to ask you one last question, and it's this. If you were looking back right now, again, 75 books is a lot of books. You speak a lot. Where does your inspiration come from? In other words, who are you imagining that you want to serve, or where do the people show up that you want to serve? Or where does the seed come from?
Well, it comes from my relationships with guys like you, who I love, and you know that. I love you, Mike. And also from my audiences, because they are such wonderful people. You find that the category of people that is eager to learn new things and comes to seminars like this is a complete cut above and different from other people. Statistically, they're in the top 10% of people in the world today, because they take the time, they invest in themselves, they do harder work. Where everybody else is going to the bar or watching television or football games, the very best people are constantly learning and growing. So it's like an honor. My wife came to hundreds of my seminars, and she asked me a couple of times, she said, where do you get such remarkable people at these seminars? I said, because they're self-selected. They are selected themselves. They're an elite that is self-selected. So that's where I get my energy from, and just nonstop.
Okay. So that one thing that we were talking about, because we had a couple minutes earlier to speak, and you said something that struck me more intensely than the word would have a week ago, a month ago, a year ago. But you talked about how your clients, your customers, we share in common, our audiences, is ambition. They're ambitious.
Yes.
And I think that's something about you as well, is in all the time I've known you, which is probably, it can't be too far from 10 years-ish now at this point. You are unbelievably ambitious. It's like your love of learning and teaching, it just keeps you cranking and cranking and cranking. So you're constantly busy. So I guess maybe the best way to wrap this up is, do you have any other final either words of encouragement, recommendation, suggestion, as some of the folks who are here are either finishing and writing their very first book or their second or third or fourth or fifth? What would you say to them right now, based on your observations of the changes and transformation that are taking place in the world?
Well, I read a book on the way to Vietnam and read a book back. And in this book, in the introduction, it talks about Moore's Law, which says the number of transistors on a chip doubles every 18 months, and it's now up to more than 2 billion chips. It'll be up to 10 billion transistors on a chip within a few years. So your telephone now has the computing power of what used to fill an airplane hangar. But the other law that it mentioned, and I hadn't thought about it, was Metcalfe's law, which is the law of multiples. So in a network, if there's 2 people in a network, it has a certain value. If there's 20, if there's 200, 2,000, like Facebook, then the value of it becomes something like 1 to the 500th zeroth power. It's just unbelievable. Well, it's the same thing, and we were talking about this before. When you write a book, that is one thing. But when you give a talk, that is something else that multiplies the book times the talk, which multiplies times the book. When you write articles, when you consult, when you coach, when you work with people, when you operate your own business, each of these starts to multiply your ability to reach, your ability to get results, your ability to earn more money, your ability to be more persuasive. So this is a very important beginning, is to learn how to publish a best-selling book, but then do something else and something else and something else. And remember, every single person who is at the top of their field was at one time at the bottom of their field. As a matter of fact, as my friend Harv Eker says, every master was once a disaster. And most people who are successful in fields that you admire and respect today, at one time did not even know those fields existed. Yeah. So let this be a springboard to be continually hungry, to be continually eager to learn new things that you can combine with things that you know, to combine with more things that you know. And you actually have not a multiplier effect, but you have a multiplier. I'm sorry, you have not an additional effect, but a multiplier effect. Right. That's what I would recommend.
All right. Thank you, my friend. Awesome.
Thank you.
Brian Tracy. All right.